more and better results both personally and professionally. Today, we are interviewing Mark Villarreal, although he pronounces his name several different ways, so he can do that for you. And Mark is an international best-selling author as well as a fabulous public speaker and is an expert in leadership and culture in the workplace. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you for having me. It's very exciting to be on.
Well, we're very excited to have you today. So I know you wrote these two fabulous books, Shortcuts to Get Lost and Leadership Lessons from Mom. I am so intrigued by Leadership Lessons from Mom. Would you just tell us what lessons you learned from Mom in terms of leadership?
Well, everything. So it's funny because I wrote Shortcuts to Get Lost is the first book, but on my blogs, I would always quote where my mom was the best leadership coach who chose to be a housewife. And she had that luxury, that was her choice. And I would talk about the lesson or what happened as a child, the lesson that she taught me, and then how it relates to business today. So there's actually 40 lessons in the book. Starts from adolescence all the way up to, it's 5 chapters, all the way up to her death. So, and it goes through each of them, and every single one points to it. And I get asked many times, how is that or why? And I said, well, mothers are concerned about 2 things that leaders are. One, that you form the right behaviors that create the right character. And once you have the right character, then that you form the right habits. Leadership is no different. And so that's how I relate that. And it's done well. It was blessed, became an international bestseller and hit #1 in 6 countries. So seems like some people can relate to it.
So, all right. So thinking that there are 40 lessons, I'm sure you get this question all the time. What are the top 3 lessons that you want to share with us today?
You know, it depends on the time of the day. So,
well, it's around lunchtime right now where we're set to go.
Well, I'll go with the very first foundational one. And she preached this not only when I was young, but she knew to bring it up several times. And coaches do that. Great coaches communicate the vision constantly. And so she would always preach about values and principles. And it was a very big concern of hers. And she would tell me that values are what you live by, and you want to live your values daily. And when you do that, then they form your principles, so which become a habit, an automatic. And she said, everything of your life will be built upon that. And so it's important that you make that a strong foundation, because that's every bit of who you will become. So I have to start with that one. And that's exactly what we teach in leadership and teaching companies when before they build their mission and their vision, they have to set the values and the principles of their organization. So you can see how it relates, and it's the same thing. And every decision after that has to point back to that. And they have to test that at times. Sometimes they maybe even reevaluate their values. So, but and that's one that I would say always jumps out because it's so foundational. It has to be there.
I love that. So a lot of times people have challenges with values because they think things like honesty or customer service, right? So what kind of values have you seen or heard of that are really unique and special?
Well, I would say the first one, and once again, it comes from my mom, was humility. You can go anywhere and people talk about trust, integrity, ethics, celebrate success. I mean, you want those are all great values. But my mom taught me that humility was a strength, not a weakness. And she said, so as a leader, if you lead with humility, people will and she talked about be genuine, speak from the heart. People will follow you. People will respect you more when you have to make a hard decision. And if you then maybe don't live a value because you're human, that humility will allow you to say, you know what, I apologize, respect's a value, and I maybe just got angry there, and I need to make sure that I apologize for that. And but humility actually also keeps you hungry because you realize you learn from everybody. And I had someone that reported to me last year that says, you know what I love about you is that you ask me questions to learn. He says, I just find that amazing. And it excited him. It motivated him so it just built a good culture.
I love that. All right. So are there any other interesting values that you want to share that you can think of that other people have thought besides humility? Because I'm sure that they're going, really, that one? Is there?
Yeah, well, I mean, once again, I always get very foundational, but then from there you can branch out. Like you said, you should have always trust, integrity, ethics, and that. But values of being innovative and to encourage that.
Oh,
And there's many ways that you build that. So, but we also, when we say be innovative, but also be innovative and expect accountability. So in other words, we don't say, well, I was just trying to be innovative. No, I want to bring this forward. I think it's innovative, but when you expect accountability, it means you think it through better as well. So those are great ones that have driven some very good companies that have allowed that within their organizations.
So setting vision and values is really important. That's lesson number 1 from Mom. What was another lesson from Mom that you think is really important in your top 3, let's say, out of 40?
Well, I always tell a story about one time, when you're a teenager, and this was the teen years, which is chapter 3. I was talking about some kid that wanted to join our clique. You get these cliques that you're in. We surfed out in California, and to me, the kid was a little weird. And I said some kind of derogatory statement about him, and my mom stopped me right there. She did not like anyone to be spoken about in that way, anyway. But she says, first, and she called me Marcos Antonio. So if you're Hispanic and you got your first and middle name said to you by your mother, you're in trouble. And she said, first of all, you don't speak about somebody like that. And then she asked me, because I'm like, well, you don't understand, Mom. And then she asked me, well, are you concerned about your reputation? So I'm like, you get it. Certainly you understand. Yeah, Mom, it's my reputation. That's important to me. And she said, I want you to be more concerned about your character than your reputation.
Ooh.
Your reputation may open doors, but your character will keep you there. And so that was, everything was about character with her. And it was my teen years that I realized all these lessons are showing me that character is so important to my mom. And, because sometimes she wouldn't tell me what the lesson was. She'd make me live it first. And then sometimes she would say, this is what I'm doing. And this is why I did this. Because sometimes I'd ask her, I'll give you the next one was just enough rope. And that was, I tell a story, and I tell it all in the book, where we egged a house as kids. And she knew I did it, but, she was waiting she's like, so-and-so's, the neighbor's house got egged and this. And I'm like, no, we were watching TV because I was at a friend's house when we did it. She already knew I did it, but she was giving me just enough rope. And then finally and I said, well, if you knew I did it, then why don't you just get on me? She says, because I'm trying to train in you, and I'm giving you just enough rope. And you decide whether you use that rope to save yourself or to hang yourself. And eventually I want you to see that you'll still be in trouble, but the more that you choose quickly enough to save yourself, the less the burden of that trouble will be. So, because you're making good character choices. Everything comes back to character. You can see how it's just a circle.
I love that. So I'm just thinking, as if I was sitting in the audience, how would you define character, if in terms of what Mom said and what you say, and who has the best character in terms of being a leader?
Well, first of all, character can be bad character or good character. So when I say character, my mom was concerned about my character. She wanted me to have good character. So good character to her was someone that, and especially as a leader, that was a servant leader. She believed in servant leadership, and that's what mothers do. They're serving their kids, and they do it for the benefit, and so much in the relation of the more you focus on your kids' character and success, it relates in business. The more you focus on your people's success, yours will come naturally. So good character is living your values, correcting yourself, and understanding that you're being watched.
And, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and understanding you're being watched. I tell a story, and it's a story, there's 2 stories intertwined, but one's called Dream Big. My mom, when you're a kid, you can always dream big, and I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policeman, and the sky's the limit. Something changes in us probably around the teen years that we start thinking, well, life is going to stop me from that, or there's roadblocks. And my mom used to always tell me, I want you to always dream big. I don't want you ever to lose that little kid in you. And she said, because you need to encourage others to do the same as you become in business. And she would, even in business in my mature years, she would talk about that. But she would also tell me, because it was about my teen years where I decided I want to be in the computer business. And she said, mijo, which means my son in Spanish. So I'll use, when I talk about my mom, I have to have how she said it to me. That's great. But if there's anything that you want to know what I want you to be, and that when I pass away, I'll smile down from heaven, is I want you to be a good example. And no matter what you do, if you're a good example, I will smile. So I understand you're going to make mistakes, and if you're a good example on how you own up to those mistakes and accept the results or the consequences, then that will satisfy me, because I want you to understand that you're being watched. And in fact, I put a statement out on my blog the other day that you are teaching by example, whether you're teaching by instruction or not. So, you can teach by instruction, but people are always watching you. So if you're teaching by instruction, but your example's opposite, people are noticing that.
So then why, in terms of character, if you think about corporations, why don't employees have more character, knowing that they're being watched and it's good and bad character? Do they just seem to go through the motions sometimes?
Well, I say that first starts with the culture that the organization defines. I worked for a CEO, and I've reported to the last 20 years. I was always reporting to a CEO. But I worked for a CEO that he spoke about it daily. And he pointed, any call that we'd have, he'd quiz us on the values and the mission and the vision. And he did that because he wanted us to push it down. So he realized it started at the top. But then we had things about, hey, so-and-so lived this value, and we brought that up on meetings, and we had that in contests or the awards for it. So he really drove the importance of it, and you can see that culture permeate. And what happens is then people start sticking out who don't match that. But in addition, then your HR and your managers, and this is something that we teach when we do consulting, is how do you build that in your job descriptions, and how do you build that in your hiring process? Because you want to hire someone that's going to match your culture, match your vision, and understand the values. Because then when they match that, they understand that to be a valuable employee, they have not only match your values and principles, but if they can build a development plan around your vision, they become even more valuable. So it can be done. I've seen it done, and I've worked in it, and I consult with that all the time.
Okay. So I love the 3 lessons from Mom. Tell me why shortcuts don't get you lost, or they do get you lost.
Yeah, it's actually shortcuts get you lost. Okay.
Yeah, it's not that don't get you lost. I always think shortcuts don't get you lost, but I guess they do get you lost.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the book is a book about culture and how to establish culture from the top down in a company. And it's written in a fable version. That's why it's called the Dangers of the Blind Leading the Blind. It's funny, but the title actually comes from a lesson from Mom. Shortcuts get you lost. And it's a story about when I was walking home, 8 years old, in Lakewood, California. And back then you could walk home by yourself. It was 2 miles. But there was these kids that always took a shortcut that I knew they lived right around me. But they took the shortcut and got home earlier. Well, that one day I just wanted to get home earlier. I took the shortcut. I got lost somewhat in the woods, and I got scared. I had to backtrack to where I started that shortcut and then walked home and got home. I was late. My mom was upset, and she taught me, you need to learn that shortcuts get you lost. And the danger of a shortcut is when you get lost, you have to start back where you started that shortcut. And the bigger danger of a shortcut is sometimes you will have what you think is success, and that will create that bad habit in you, and you'll start taking shortcuts without realizing it.
Oh.
Okay. So that's what the book teaches, that in business, shortcuts will get you lost. What happens when you backtrack? And I got live examples in business to where we got to sell with this company. We never did, and we celebrated, but we didn't realize that it was a company of 10,000 employees, that because we took a shortcut, but people take shortcuts even on their values, and it gets you lost because, right now business isn't so good. I need this. And so I'll cross the line of ethics and I'll bring this in, and then it really catches up to you. So we teach this in proper business planning because we have to teach to identify what is a shortcut and what is condensing the cycle to be effective, because there is a difference. So And that's why planning again with no results actually, one of my signature speeches that I give, and I am giving it again next week as well, is one that takes people through to a situation of two organizations that had the same goal, or they believe they did, but how one succeeded and how one failed so bad. And it takes you through all their planning, and you'll see the one where the shortcuts really caught up to them, and the one that really just executed very well and stayed very focused.
So then, okay, what's a typical shortcut that we do in business that gets us in trouble?
Well, one might be the ethics is probably one of the biggest ones I see all the time. The others, it might be a process. So I come from a sales environment where we had a process on how you identify everything about a customer so we can make sure that we line it up with the right solution that fits them. Well, sometimes that customer might speak up and say, "Oh, thanks for calling. I need this." And you stop it with that instead of saying, "Well, great. Well, let's take a step back. Let me find out a little more about you so I can make sure that what we fit you with is exactly what your needs are." Or you might have some things that I could actually probably even save you some money on what you're asking about. But because there's a difference from being a salesperson to being a partner. So, and we built organizations where we wanted to be partners and trusted in that organization, that they knew that we had our best interest in mind. Other shortcuts might be selling an inferior product because that's all we have to sell and we don't stand on it. So, and until something better comes along, well, I got to do something right now. And sometimes, you do it because they're hard decisions and you got to, feed yourself. I mean, there are those barriers, but those are a lot of the shortcuts in the business. I see it all the time when you script things out on process and procedures as well, and people will take a shortcut, and sometimes they get buried for a long time. Accounting shortcuts will cost you because sometimes I've seen that not come to surface for the next 2 years, and it's like there was this accounting error that we never caught, and we had to backtrack, and now we got to do all this or pay these fines or that type of thing.
Wow. Okay. Do we do shortcuts in life too, or just in business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, my first example was a shortcut in life.
That's true. And, that's kids. Like adults, do you think that we're doing shortcuts as business too? I mean, sorry, business in life too. Like, are there any shortcuts you write about in life in the book?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just used the example when I was an 8-year-old kid. In the book, but I mean, there are shortcuts that we take in life, shortcuts on our health, so I mean, that's a big thing, and it's something that I fight with myself even, and I'm not going to go walking today, and that's a shortcut, but and eventually then it's like, wow, I put on 20 pounds and my knees hurt when I walk, and and you get in a vicious cycle. So there's many shortcuts in finances. I'm not going to be as frugal as I need to be. I didn't map out my finances, and so I'm just spending for today because I know I always got a next paycheck, but I'm very disorganized, so, and I'm sure people take shortcuts in relationships too, right?
Yeah, right. I don't have to send the flowers. I could just show up with a card.
Yeah. She knows I love her.
She knows I love
right?
her.
I mean, and men do that in marriage, right? Yeah, she knows I love her and that, and so, and in some ways that's a shortcut. So.
Yeah. You don't really think about these things as shortcuts and how they could get you in trouble in both personally and professionally. And since we want to help people get better results, both personally and professionally, I wanted to explore both areas.
Right.
I guess the question is that how do you know when you're in a shortcut or when you made a shortcut? Like, I didn't even think about the exercise thing as a shortcut. Good thing I exercised this morning. So how do you know that you've done it? Because sometimes I think you do it not intentionally. And then how do you get yourself out of it?
Well, there's two ways. You have to build an evaluation process that you evaluate. So we evaluate things quarterly, and we go, and so whether it's business, but I mean, the beauty in life. Let's say it's a health thing. You got other people to compare it to. Well, he seems pretty healthy. What does he do? Business is no different. Well, we've had some better results here. What was different about that? And what is it that we don't know about this organization? What is it we don't know? What is it that we know, and what is it that we don't know? So actually, chapter 4 of Shortcuts Get You Lost teaches you about problem solving, and it takes you through what is it you know, what is it you don't know, and what are your assumptions. It's okay to make some assumptions as long as they're educated assumptions to help make the best decisions. So that's one of the processes that we teach on how you evaluate and go through that.
Wow. So, okay. So in terms of culture, sometimes I see organizations be very purposeful about their culture, and other ones I see they just sort of organically grow. Do you think that it's better to be purposeful or let it organic or change?
No, I wholeheartedly believe that you should own your culture, drive your culture. It doesn't mean that you don't adjust your culture, and you evaluate that. We teach that on, okay, great. So what's the evaluation process? We have checklists that are called roadmaps to success and inspirational checklist. What is the inspirational checklist for employees? What is the inspirational checklist for managers? And so we teach this is how you measure against it. I once went to a meeting with an organization, and this organization, and they're in San Antonio here, lives their mission and their vision, and it's all ingrained in their culture. And I went with an account executive, and as soon as we sat down, the manager that we're meeting with says, "What's your mission statement of your organization?" And the employee that I was with didn't know it. And but I was able to answer it and say, and here's what it means to you. And it was a great lesson on one, making sure that even our people, because it doesn't mean even though I preach it, we still got to work with it daily. But it told me everything about that organization, and they succeeded because of it. If you go to their website, because your great organizations will post their values, their principles, their mission, and their mission on their website. Maybe not their vision, because that's internal, but because that's their method of, I want my customers to hold us accountable. If I'm putting it on the website, I have to own that to our customers, and theirs is to give fanatical service, and they're talking about being fanatics, and their culture is because the other person I was meeting with, their culture is very relaxed. You can wear what you want to wear, and the guy came down in a flip-flops and a Creature from the Black Lagoon T-shirt that I was meeting with, and that's their environment, but they drive that culture throughout.
Do you think that culture is going to change as the younger generation comes in?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, my next book, I'm working on managing millennials, because I help build some departments with millennials. And I keep hearing, in fact, I was on another radio show and they asked me, well, millennials are going to jump job to job, and that's just the nature of them. And I said, that's because that organization didn't show them what a career was. And it stopped them, like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, they're jumping job to job because they're not giving them any reason to stay. And the millennials I've managed, when we said, great, here is what we have available to you here, and we have career lattices, what we call, that are very visible. Here's how you can grow. Here's where you fit in. And they have actually become very loyal and have stayed and have grown. I do find that I say millennials have the most courage than any group that I've ever managed before or worked with. And some of this because they grew up in the digital age that I did not. And so I've had to slow them up more than push them forward. And in fact, one organization, we created this whole call center full with millennials, and I had to teach them, and it's a saying from my mom, but it's up in every one of their cubes, called Stop, Look, and Listen. Because they were racing, and I said, you need to stop, okay? You need to look at and be aware, and you need to listen what either your customer or I'm telling you this, and then move forward, and you'll see that you actually will shorten that cycle better than racing as quickly as you are. So as we did that, I will say millennials want to be heard. And so in other words, when they are involved in, hey, we're setting our values, hey, what do you think about this? And we had the organization where we even created a committee of how do we give back to the community. All of those things drove that culture where the millennials became very involved and very loyal to it.
I love that. All right, so we're almost to the end of the show, believe it or not. And so,
wow.
I know, it went fast, right?
Yep.
Well, I want to know more. So, okay, what's the most important tip that you should tell me and the audience that we should know about in terms of either our culture or leadership or both?
Well, I believe I mentioned several of them, but I think the most important one is, first of all, identify who you are, and be genuine. I used to tell my mom, this person became a manager and they changed. She said they shouldn't have. They got promoted to a manager because of who they were. Why should they change? And so your ego is not your amigo. That's another lesson in the book. And that. So, but if you're genuine and speak from the heart, and then you follow the process then of laying the route foundations and gaining feedback from your people, but understanding that being a leader is a molder of consensus, not a builder of consensus. So you get feedback, but hey, you gave me great feedback, but that didn't fit here, and you have to mold that consensus. That's a Martin Luther King quote, and that true leadership is a molder of consensus. But if you involve people and let them to participate, you will see them rally around the business, and that's just probably the biggest thing that I would teach and preach. And then build diversity in your organization, because the more diverse your organization, the better your plans, the better your decisions, and the better the innovation that comes in.
That's awesome. All right. I could talk to you for hours, Mark, and I'm sure that other people would like to know more about you. So I know you speak, and I know that you also work with organizations around leadership and culture. How do we get in touch with you?
Well, I have a website, and it's markvillarreal.com. So that you can go there.
Wait, spell it out for people, because I bet you can't.
MARK, V as in Victor, ILLAREAL.com.
All right, do it one more time.
MARK, V as in Victor, ILLAREAL.
Okay.
But also, if they're on LinkedIn, please feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. That's where I really started my blogging. You can see my employment history and what I do and what we speak about as well. But on my website too, it has all my other social medias, my YouTube, my Facebook, and my Twitter that you could connect with.
And in terms of hiring you for a speech, how do we do that?
Well, I mean, you could send me an email at mark@markvillarreal.com. And in fact, you could send me that, and we would send out what we call our speaker one sheet, which shows our 3 signature speeches, but we could always customize, and it's based on the event as well. And, or they can contact me on my phone number too, 210-365-1843.
Wait, say it one more time,
210-365-1843.
Yeah, we don't like that fast, Mark, so you got to go a little slower.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I hear you. All right, any parting words to our audience in terms about how to get better results in their business and their life?
Well, first thing is lay solid foundation, believe in the plan, stick to it, speak to it every day. I had a sign in my office, not my cube, my office that said, until your people start mocking you, you haven't said your message enough. Mm-hmm. Meaning, and people will tell you, I repeat myself constantly because I kept telling the story, sharing the vision, and then I would create milestones and say, we haven't hit our goal yet, but this shows we're on our way, and this is why. And so that's one of the biggest keys right there.
Awesome. Mark, thank you so much for being on the Get More Results television show today. You've been an awesome guest. Please, everyone, go and link in with Mark. Go to his website. He's got a great blog. If you need a fabulous speaker, he is your guy, especially where leadership and culture is concerned. If you want to buy his books, either one was a best-selling international author or best-selling book. You've got Shortcuts Get You Lost, as well as Lessons That I've Learned from Mom, right?
Leadership lessons from Mom.
Leadership lessons I learned.
And they're available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
There you go. Mark, Thank you so much for being on our show today. We really appreciate you. Everyone, thank you so much for watching today. We look forward to seeing you next time on GetMoreResults.com. I'm Jean Oursler, Get More Results TV. I'm Jean Oursler, your host, the Results Queen.
Thank you.